So to reorganize and rationalize your financial providers is clearly not, it's a step that needs to be considered quite deeply, because you're unwinding many years of accumulation of these financial institutions who at present are all playing an important role in the flow of money through your business.
The trap of managed fragmentation is real, but how do you actually break out of it? In this next segment, Adrian and Alec move beyond the status quo. We're talking about the evolution of modern enterprise and why the next generation of Treasury isn't just about safety, it's about speed, scale, and strategic growth. Here's part 2 of Adyen Presents The New Treasury Standard.
So we're constantly seeing enterprises and platforms evolve their business models and get into different areas, such as offering embedded finance for their customers. As these boundaries blur, what's the role of the modern Treasury team?
Yeah, I think that's a great question and a great area where these businesses are expanding into, right? Getting closer and closer to their customers and to the actual activity that underpins their platform. If you look at a retail marketplace that wants to enable better experience for their customer, if you think about it, the payment journey and the payout journey is really a structural part of that customer experience, right? Actually delivering the payment and the payout when a good is being exchanged can be a key differentiator. So I think what we're seeing across these businesses, across platforms, is the value that having expertise and building that experience, that payment experience, that payout experience on top of the core product feature, the marketplace, the website, as being a structural benefit to the business from a NPS and quality of the product perspective, but also from a value and economic drive of the business. And we're seeing the treasury function as being a core stakeholder in that process to build the internal infrastructure and the internal platform with their financial partners to actually execute that, to enable that for their sellers, their buyers, the customers that come to their platform.
I think what we're observing when organizations are looking to enhance their CX, all of a sudden the finance team, the treasury team need to be involved, because very often they are the individuals who can unlock some of the differentiation that customers are now expecting from using platforms and enterprises and that payment experience that they expect.
So we talked about the range of financial partners that companies are currently using, right? Those 12 payment providers, 5 or 6 different banks, 40 different bank accounts. Is there a role for consolidation in this, or is it more of an emphasis of how those partners are being used?
So to reorganize and rationalize your financial providers is clearly not, it's a step that needs to be considered quite deeply, because you're unwinding many years of accumulation of these financial institutions who at present are all playing an important role in the flow of money through your business. What we find is the most successful transformations are often focused around what the customer wants, the CX, and working backwards from there, because actually what we realize is that the fragmentation, the trapped capital, the lack of speed, the lack of information actually harms what you can deliver as an organization to the benefit of your customer. Think about paying out quickly or issuing cards to make payments, things that people just expect. They want that payment in their digital wallet so they can go and use that money. And quite often the fragmentation that is built up prevents organizations from doing that. So if you were a treasurer, how would you bridge that gap between safety and speed? Where would you start? What would your priorities be?
I think that difference in between, or that point about speed and safety, is a pretty important focus area, right? Because, obviously you want to ensure safety from a paramount perspective, and we're seeing, this was one of the points that was also raised in our surveys, that the landscape for fraud is shifting as well. The first focus area should be just breaking down bit by bit across your treasury function, across your processes. What practically do you need to get done, right? What are your daily inflows, your daily outflows? How is that structured on a regular basis? And what opportunities do you have, right, to find some efficiency, find some speed? I think we're in a constant process in treasury management of reevaluating and figuring out how different payment types or different methodologies can help the function, and that's going to be a constant reality. So I think from a treasury management perspective is, hey, what are the specific areas that I want to focus on, and the specific areas that I have agency to effect a change on.
You're listening to Adyen Presents with Adrian Davis and Alec McLaurin.
If I was a treasurer and my CFO read the Adyen BCG report, I think I'd want to act. I think I'd want to understand first. I think I'd want to understand the current state and understand to what extent this fragmentation is impacting performance. I think I would also want to just project forward and understand what the organization is seeking to achieve over the next couple of years in terms of its strategy towards its customers or its merchants or indeed its suppliers, and work backwards from that point. What we find with our customers is that within a workshop environment, it's quite easy to scope out some of the areas for improvement, and then it's a risk-reward conversation to understand where you start and how radically you prune back some of this growth that has emerged over many years.
And to that point, I think oftentimes when it comes to making changes in treasury, we're talking about big transformation cycles, right? Big projects. For example, shifting a cash management profile from or a cash management mandate from one bank to another can be a multi-year process. Do you think the industry is adapting to that landscape to bring a bit more reactivity to treasury and how changes can be made? Or is that going to be a constant going?
I think we're at risk of maybe making this sound too hard for treasurers. The reality is, with modern technology platforms today, this is about connecting APIs, and they can sit on top of that infrastructure. That's not perfect, but it's a good start. If you want a single version of the truth, if you want to understand where your money is at any point in time in that cycle, then there are ways of doing that relatively quickly. But in many cases, more significant reform is needed, and that does require a reduction in the number of banking partners and financial institutions, and indeed fintechs, that you're reliant upon for a number of services. That plethora of suppliers doesn't really, in the end, give you less risk.
From a treasury perspective, there's always going to be a range of providers that they need, right? I think it's not realistic to say, hey, you can just use one bank or one provider to do everything that you need. I think it's more of an emphasis of, who do I want to rely on for what? Where do I want volumes to flow through? How should I think about operational flows versus where I want to invest my excess cash and optimize yield? Practically speaking, who is best placed to solve what problem? You need to get visibility of your cash. You need to optimize how that cash works, and you need to control that working capital and put it to work. That will be a constant theme for treasury, but I think now is a really, the right time and a really strong opportunity for treasury teams to be more proactive, to actually drive to more real-time outcomes.
I think the Adyen and BCG research highlights in summary two really important points. And I think one shouldn't surprise us. That is that the fundamental role of treasury hasn't changed, and it shouldn't change. It's all about managing liquidity, optimizing working capital. But I think it's the context within which the modern treasury team needs to operate. That's what's changing. The ability to access different tools, to manage things on a real-time basis, to make the most of the technological advancements, but also being very conscious about the need of customers, of suppliers, of partners. And I think that's bodes for a really exciting future.
I've heard a treasurer call their treasury management practice or system or the function that they built up as a large container ship, as being very powerful, very directional, but not nimble. I think what we're seeing now in the industry is the ability for treasury to be a lot more flexible, a lot more reactive, and to actually deploy tools into their business to drive outcomes. And I think that's a really exciting opportunity for treasury management today.
The Adyen and BCG research, I believe, creates a strong case, a mandate for change for the treasury team. It's about continuing much of what they've always done, but within a different context. And I think that the research indicates quite clearly that the business needs more from them, that there is an opportunity for the treasury team to take a wider strategic view and an impact into the organization that enables the business model to consider new ways of doing business.
Agentic commerce is evolving fast, but scaling it takes the right infrastructure. Adyen's new white paper breaks down what merchants need to know. Find it in the show notes.